Whatever your political beliefs may be, I would just ask, first and foremost, that you just be honest about what it is exactly that you advocate and condone. Now, I think that's a pretty reasonable request. Just say what you really believe. Say what you really want to have happen. Now, most people probably think they already do, and they don't recognize how often they do the same sort of politician-style spin that you'll hear in political campaigns that don't actually come right out and say what they want to do. They sort of put fluff and euphemisms around it to make it sound better than it is. The left do this, the right do this, moderates do this, everybody does that in politics. I'm just asking you to be honest. Because if you're one of the good guys, which I assume that you think you're one of the good guys, and you're advocating what is right and true and just and all that, why would you have trouble honestly describing what it is that you condone? Because I don't. When I condone something, I don't have to hide it under vague distractions and weird terminology. I just say what it is. For example, if somebody is running around murdering people, I want somebody, whether it's me or somebody else, I want somebody to stop that person by any means necessary. If it's possible to tackle them, okay. If it's necessary to shoot them and kill them to stop them from murdering innocents, I advocate that. I believe that. I would do that myself. I would support somebody else doing that. So I don't have to sort of hide that under euphemisms of I would advocate a policy whereby there would be I can just say what I literally would want to have happen. Almost nobody on the left or the right will just say what they actually advocate. And I'm going to give some examples here. Think of something that you want the government to do. Maybe you want it to fund a military to protect us from scary foreigners. Maybe you're a conservative who is rah, rah, rah for the military. Maybe you want government to help the poor by housing or welfare or whatever, and you're on the political left. But to say that you want something to happen in some vague general term, well, I want the poor taken care of. Okay, but that doesn't really say what makes that happen. I want the poor taken care of too. I want scary foreign invaders stopped if they invade. Does anybody not want those things? But what is the actual government action you condone? For example, when it comes to the military, I'll start with the conservatives. You want this big military with their machines to fight them off, whoever them may be. Now, that gets funded by taxes, and taxes are a demand that government throws out and says, you're gonna give us this money or we'll do these unpleasant things to you. So to say, well, I want there to be a military, okay, but how is it going to exist? How is it going to be funded? So if you want me to be forced to pay for the military that you want, I'm just asking that you be honest about that you say so, that you actually literally describe what it is that you want to have happen. Now, you may just say, well, you should be required to do that. You shouldn't be allowed to not fund the military. Okay, but what does that mean? If to say I'm required to. You have to. Well, no, I don't. I could choose not to send money to them. Well, if you believe something should be done to me if I don't send money in to fund whatever thing you want, say what it is. Just be honest enough to say what you want to have happen to me if I don't hand over money to fund the military, the police, whatever it is that you want government to do. Now, I might as well throw this to the left too. Same thing, if you want government caring for the poor, okay, but they get the money by taxing us. So if I say I don't want to give my money to that program, welfare, whatever it is, for whatever reason, whether I'm just greedy or I give to charity directly and I don't trust the government version, it doesn't mean anything for you to say, well, you're not allowed to. It's only real if you make consequences. You're required to do that. Well, what if I don't? You're required to. Well, what if I don't? You're required to. What do you advocate be done to me? On the left, on the right, what do you personally want to be done to me personally if I don't hand over the money to fund whatever you want government to do? Actually say what it is. Again, if you're the good guy, if you're advocating what is true and right, you shouldn't need to hide it under euphemisms and dodges and changing the subject and saying, well, there's consequences to not paying your taxes. Yeah, I'm well aware there are consequences to not paying your taxes. I'm not asking what might happen if I don't fund what that person or that person wants. I'm asking what you want to have happen to me if I don't hand over the money to fund the things that you want government doing. Whether it's welfare or schools or the military or the police or whatever it is. Whatever you want government doing, they fund by way of taxation. So say what you want done to me if I don't pay that. And not just me, obviously, but to all your neighbors, all your friends, all your neighbors, everyone you know. Say in literal, specific, personal terms what it is that you want to have happen to all those people you know, all those people in your life, and all the many, many millions of people you don't know, if they don't hand over money to fund the things that you want government to do. I'll show you what it looks like for somebody to be all the way honest. If you don't choose to give your money to the poor, what I want to be done to you is nothing. Even if I think, well, you had a whole bunch, you could have easily spared some. At most, I might say, well, I think you're sort of a greedy poohead. And that's it. I don't want anybody doing anything to you just because you didn't spend your money the way I wanted you to. And if there's some road or some bridge or something that we really wish there was a bridge here because you have to drive for an hour to get across. Otherwise, it would be really cool for there to be a bridge right here. If I really want that bridge and you, for whatever reason, say, I'm not giving my money to that, I don't want anything bad to happen to you. I don't want somebody to show up and take your property or threaten you or put a lien on your house or arrest you for tax evasion. I want you to have complete control over what you fund, even if it means you're not funding what I want. That's my position, and I'm very specific and honest about it. So what's your position? If I don't want to fund by way of taxation the things that you want government to do, what do you want to have happen to me? Now, we can't have anything like a rational discussion about the best policies if nobody's actually being honest. If what you actually want is men to eventually show up at my house and either put a lien on my house and steal my house, that's what happens if you don't pay property taxes. Eventually the sheriff will show up and we're doing a sheriff sale and we're selling your house because you didn't keep paying money to the local, whatever local level is doing property taxes on you. If you condone that being done to your neighbors, you will either pay for the school that my child goes to, this many hundreds of dollars every year, or I want the sheriff to come take your house and kick you out of it and drag you out at gunpoint if you have to. If you condone that, then just say that. Now, I would disagree with that, but we can't even get to the disagreement until you're honest about what you condone. You can't have a rational, useful discussion of opposing views if neither opposing view is actually honest about what they condone. As another example, if you're someone who's saying, well, I think AR-15 should be banned. Well, what does that actually mean? What do you actually condone? Well, nobody should be allowed to have them. Well, what does that mean? I have one. And if politicians change their laws and say I'm not allowed to have one, I'm still going to have it. So if that happens, what would you want to have done to me? Not if I threaten somebody or shoot somebody, but just if I possess a thing that the politicians say you're not allowed to have that. Because you're not allowed to doesn't mean anything if there aren't consequences. For you to say, I don't think you should be allowed to have an AR-15, that's meaningless unless there are some negative consequences to having it. So if you want to have men with guns kick down my door and point them on my face and take my gun and drag me away and put me in a cage for 10 years, if I possess an illegal firearm, then say that. At least start by just being honest about what it is that you condone, say what you condone, including the consequences, not just, well, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to build a deck without getting permission from the local. You're not allowed to have a farm on your own property without doing this. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. If you think that people shouldn't be allowed to smoke marijuana, which I don't do, but a hell of a lot of people do, what is it that you advocate be done to them if they disobey? Because there's a hell of a lot of people who went rah, rah, rah for the war on drugs. By the way, I used to be one of them a very long time ago, back when I believed in statism and government. I was one of them, and I wasn't honest either about what I actually condoned. If you really and truly believe that some guy smoking a joint in his own house, not bothering anybody, if you really and truly believe that what should happen to him is an armed SWAT team kicks down his door, points guns in his face, drags him away from his family and friends, and put him in a cage for a while, start by saying that. Because we can't discuss whether your position is rational or moral if you don't say what your position is. Say what you actually condone. There's a reason that almost nobody on the left and almost nobody on the right actually says what they condone. Almost nobody on the left and almost nobody on the right is actually honest about what they condone. That's because when you put it in literal terms and actually specifically, clearly describe what it is that you personally advocate be done to other real people in the real world, it sounds really, really bad, because it is. So when I'm asking you to just be honest, should sound like a reasonable request, but chances are you're not going to be. And you'll probably respond to this video not by actually being honest and literally describing what it is that you and your favorite candidate and your favorite party condone being done to anyone who doesn't comply with whatever agenda you believe. Instead, you'll complain about me asking for you to be honest and clear and specific. Well, taxation isn't really theft. Okay, use whatever words you want. What do you want to have happen to the person who doesn't pay? If somebody doesn't pay their property taxes, what do you want to have happen to them? I'll tell you what I want to have happen to somebody who doesn't pay for what I want. Nothing at all. I want them to be left in freedom. I want them to be allowed to choose what they do with their own money and what they do with their own body and what they do with their own property and how they live their life and what habits they have and everything under the sun. What is most ironic, and I'll admit this comes mostly from the left, is how much people talk about tolerance. So this is Pride Month, LGBTQ, whatever the letters are up to now. You're supposed to be all aware and so compassionate and so understanding. Okay, so let's take trans person, gay person, whatever, somebody along the spectrum of people that we're supposed to be respecting and honoring and supporting this month. If that person doesn't pay for whatever you want government to do, what do you want to have done to them? I want nothing done to them. I want them to be allowed to spend their own money however they please. Do you want something unpleasant done to them if they don't pay their taxes? If they have some substance that government has said, you're not allowed to have that substance, and if you do, if we catch you, we'll send men with guns to your house to drag you away and cage you. Do you want that to happen to them? Is that what you advocate? I don't. I advocate that those people be allowed to do whatever they want with their own body. If they're not harming and attacking somebody else, do whatever you want. Spend your own money. Make your own choices. Snort, smoke, whatever you want if you're not harming other people. Doesn't mean I have to approve of their choices or their lifestyle or any of that, but I allow it. I tolerate it. I don't advocate the initiation of violence against them. So this is a test. If we're talking about tolerance, and we're talking about, this month, we're talking about lesbians and gays and trans and whatever else, Just as with everybody else in the entire world, I want those people to be completely free and have complete autonomy over their own bodies, their own money, their own property, their own choices. The only time I would ever advocate that force be used against them is if they're attacking somebody else. And I don't have to hide what I advocate if that's the case. If somebody's gay and they're going on a killing spree, I want them stopped just the same as I'd want them stopped if they weren't gay. It has nothing to do with their gayness. That's what actual tolerance looks like. That is what actual inclusiveness, that is what actual peaceful coexistence looks like. Is whether or not I choose that style, whether or not I approve of that style, whatever I think of somebody's habits. Somebody may be totally lazy and do all sorts of drugs that I think are bad for them. I may try to talk them out of it. I would never advocate force against them, even for doing habits that I think are stupid and bad for them. Would you do the same? What do you advocate against those people that you say you support and tolerate? Good for them, good for their independence and their freedom. I all the way actually condone their independence and freedom, in that I don't want government doing anything to them. I don't want anybody forcing anything on any of them unless they decide to force something on somebody else, unless they actually attack somebody. And then if anybody attacks somebody, I want them stopped by defensive force, by myself, by whoever. And I don't care whether somebody does it with a badge or not. It makes no difference to me. I want aggressors stopped, people who commit violent aggression against others and who start a fight, who harm other people. Those people should be stopped. Everybody else, their day-to-day lives, I don't want government doing anything to them. That is why I'm a voluntarist. And that's why I'm actually tolerant, unlike anybody on the political left, unlike anybody on the political right. Because if you're on the political left or political right, whether or not you want to say it out loud, whether or not you have the spine to be honest about what it is that you personally condone, you condone violent aggression against everybody you know in the form of taxation and legislation and regulation, all sorts of government intrusion into people's lives. Now, if you condone that stuff, but you don't want to actually say it, you don't really want to describe it literally, you don't want to come out and say, yeah, Bob, you've been a great neighbor. I like you a whole lot. We get along great. And if you don't pay your property taxes, I want the sheriff to come to your house eventually. They'll send a bunch of letters first, but I want him to come to your house with his deputies and guns and kick you out and take your house because you wouldn't donate some money to the school that my kid goes to. Because if you vote for property taxes, that is absolutely what you are personally condoning against all of your neighbors. Now, if you condone that, which you do if you're a Democrat or a Republican, because you're voting for people that on the local level, you know damn well they're going to keep doing property taxes. If you condone that, why would you have any trouble saying so? I don't have any trouble saying so when I actually advocate the use of force. I don't have to hide it. I don't have to be vague about it. I don't have to talk about it like some sort of policy. I advocate violence to stop people from committing aggression. Now, some people say violence, the word violence should really only be used to describe the people committing aggression, and it's defensive force. Whatever terminology you want to use, I only advocate the use of physical force against other human beings to stop them from harming somebody else. And I don't feel the need to hide that. If you feel the need to hide what it is that you vote for, that you condone, that you advocate, take a moment to think about that. Why won't you say it out loud? Why won't you actually say what you believe so strongly in? If you think you're in the right to say, all my neighbors should be forced to give to the poor, and if they don't, I want them put in prison. If you believe that, say it. If you can't say it, why not? And don't flounder on, well, you have a choice, you could leave the country. Don't make stupid excuses for why you can't say what you believe. It's like saying, well, if you live in that city where that mafia or organized crime family has power, well, I guess you deserve to be robbed. No, you don't. No, you don't. And it doesn't count as agreeing to be robbed to happen to live on a piece of dirt that some politicians claim the right to rule. But that's aside from the fact that you're the one condoning it when you vote for that. You're the one personally advocating that your neighbors be robbed and forcibly controlled in all sorts of ways. Does that make you tolerant? Does that make you in favor of peaceful coexistence? Does that make you a good neighbor? When I say, just be honest, you may assume that I'm saying, tell me, say out loud, tell the other people what it is that you really condone as far as politics and government. Well, yeah, I want that. But there's something else that has to happen first. You need to be honest with yourself. Admit to yourself what it is that you are empowering when you vote for these people. Left, right, center, I don't care. Whatever party, whatever candidate, look at what they really do. Look at the reality of government enforcers and what they do to those who disobey. Disobey the policies you support, whether you're talking about regulating this, taxing that, whatever. Until you can be honest with yourself about what it is that you condone, there will be nothing like a rational discussion. And you have no justification in complaining about the other party and all the nasty things they condone if you won't even admit to yourself inside your own head what it is that you condone. I will end by predicting this. When the day comes that you can be all the way honest with yourself about what it is that you advocate when it comes to law and government and authority, you're going to be an anarchist. That's what I am. Because I cannot advocate any government without advocating immoral violence against my neighbors. And that's something I refuse to do. I cannot advocate anyone being forced to fund things just because I want them, and they don't. I cannot advocate an institution that commits violence against other people in ways that I have no right to do. Why on earth would I vote for somebody else to use force in a situation where I know damn well it would be wrong if I did that myself? If you're a Democrat, you do that. If you're a Republican, you do that. If you vote at all, you do that. When the day comes that you're honest with yourself about what it is that you are supporting and condoning with your words and your taxes and your vote, maybe you'll figure out that the only moral choice is voluntarism. If you want to understand more about that, you can read my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. If you can't bring yourself to be honest even with yourself, what does that say about you?